Part 5, John Titor, February 14th, 2001, My Motive. I've been in your time a bit longer than I had expected. My next opportunity to go home comes in the spring. For most of my adult life, I have read about, wondered about, and debated over this time. I value this opportunity to share experiences. If you absolutely believed I was a time traveler, with no skepticism whatsoever, then we would be unable to communicate. The focus of our attention would then always be on the machine. The experiences, opinions, and reasons you do things are just as valid as mine, and just as different. I hope to return home with a better understanding of why you think and believe the way you do. Although I do understand the reasons for asking, I would not gain from any communication with you by spouting physics formulas and pop culture predictions. Please, do not assume I am purposely avoiding questions. I am human, I get tired, and I forget things. Please, just remind me if I've missed a question, and I will get to it. I do have one tip, though. If you want me to go over your post in detail, put, "Hey John, you're a big jerk," at the end of the insightful and logical part, not the beginning. In fact, maybe you could just abbreviate it and put a number ratings from 1 to 100 next to it so I know how strong you feel. Something like HJYABJ. It would save space. The physics of time travel. Acceleration equals time dilation. As pointed out earlier, acceleration will produce time dilation. This can be observed by the twins paradox. As one twin stays on Earth, the other twin in his accelerating spaceship experiences a slower passing of time. When he returns to Earth, he is noticeably younger than his twin who aged normally in Earth time. This type of time travel should have been proven already on this world line with atomic clock experiments. With sufficient power, this type of time travel will only provide practical displacement in a future direction. This type of time travel is also isolated to a single world line. You will not meet yourself. Gravity equals acceleration. As Einstein pointed out with his STR, the effects of gravity and acceleration are the same. Therefore, you will experience the same time travel effects in the twin paradox by being close to a large gravity source. In the atomic clock experiment mentioned above, the reason there was a difference in time was not because the clock in the plane was moving. It was because the clock in the wall was closer to the center of the Earth. Constant speed is not acceleration. Large gravity equals static black hole. The next step is to find a large gravity source to use in your time machine. Static black holes provide this type of power. As one twin approaches the event horizon or edge of the black hole, the other twin will watch him as he appears to slow down. He will notice his twin's watch run slower until it stops at the event horizon. The twin moving toward the horizon will notice none of this and see his watch running just fine. Although possible, a trip into a static black hole will not take you to another world line, and it's one way. The force of gravity will crush you. Rotating black hole equals donut-shaped singularity. Fortunately, most black holes are not static. They spin. Spinning black holes are often referred to as a Kerr black hole. A Kerr black hole has two interesting properties. One, they have two event horizons, and two, the singularity is not a point. It looks more like a donut. These odd properties also have a pronounced effect on the black hole's gravity. There are vectors where you can approach the singularity without being crushed by gravity. Donut-shaped singularity equals passage into alternate world line. Another more interesting result of passing through a donut singularity is that you travel through time by passing into another universe or world line. Please see Penrose diagram for Kerr black holes, or you can examine the calculations of famous physicist. So now the problem becomes, where do you find a donut-shaped singularity? Microsingularity. The existence of microsingularities, many black holes, that were created in the Big Bang was proposed on this world line in the last decade or so. They were probably about the size of a proton and disappeared over the years due to an effect of radiation evaporation. Yes, black holes do emit energy. High energy physics equals artificial microsingularities. When I first started posting online a few months ago, I said that major breakthroughs in particle physics were around your corner. Soon, CERN will bring their big machine online and they will be smashing very fast and high energy particles together. One of the more odd and potentially dangerous items produced from this increase in energy will be microsingularities a fraction of the size of an electron. Artificial microsingularity equals localized Kerr field. Through trial and error, and although they are quite heavy, hot, and capable of putting out a great deal of energy, 300 to 500 megawatts, it's discovered that these microsingularities can be electrified and captured. It is also interesting to note at this point that electrified singularities also have two event horizons. By spinning these various microsingularities, a localized Kerr field is created. Localized Kerr field equals Tipler sinusoid. By using two microsingularities in close proximity to each other, it is possible to create, manipulate, and alter the Kerr field to create a Tipler gravity sinusoid. This field can be adjusted, rotated, and moved in order to stimulate the movement of mass through a donut-shaped singularity and into an alternative world line. Thus, you have safe time travel. February 15th, 2001. Q. Do you feel some pleasure in breathing clean air? Yes, I do. However, there is a fear about being here that I can only define as uncertainty. When I walk around in 2001, the air smells clean, but I wonder if it really is. In 2036, there is no gray. The air is either clean or it will kill you. That feeling is very overwhelming when I eat here. Q. Are there people here who accept you as a time traveler? I have a very few precious relationships with people online who accept me as real or crazy and don't ask any questions. Much of my email flows through them. My parents are the only ones that have access to everything I could use to prove who I am. Q. How are you financing things? I have taken very clever and reliable measures to go undetected. My expenses are not that large. I spend a great deal of time now archiving. Q. I spotted very few typing errors in John's comments, so I'll assume that he has an average education. You must be energized and anxious to improve your education system then. Please, tell me what you plan to do. Q. Name any near-future event that makes history. You mean other than the mad cow epidemic, the breakthroughs in high-energy physics, and the unknown functions of the 5100? Q. There should be two of you here now. You would both have the same fingerprints and DNA. If you want to prove your case, then meet with your younger self and get some evidence. I am with my younger self. I don't have a case to prove, and I wonder how many needles I would be on the receiving end for that one. With your superior education, I assume you already figured out that pretty soon someone might try that with a clone. Be careful what you take for definitive proof. Q. How long will you be here? My first opportunity to go home is this spring. Q. What are you taking with you? A lot of hard drives filled with books, archived websites, pictures, and audio files. I'm also taking back family items that were lost in the war. Q. Is propane still used in the future? Yes, but not very much of it comes from natural gas. Hydrogen is converted into propane because it's easier to handle. Q. I would hope the Hawaiian Islands would be spared from the war. My parents went to Hawaii on their honeymoon. My dad told me a quick story about going to a fast food store and paying $6 or $7 for a hamburger. I got an image in my head of a huge tanker filled with frozen hamburgers headed into the Pacific. Hawaii is very dependent on the mainland for food, isn't it? Thank you for your kind words. Q. Logically, he could easily question people of this time and get all the information he needs without revealing himself. Mediums like the internet offer unique opportunities for communication. When I return, I will be debriefed on my opinions about how people in 2001 will accept time travelers. Q. Why would he reveal himself if he has no agenda? I'm not sure I exactly said that. Q. Did John come here to help somebody invent the time machine? I find this one the most interesting. What do you think would happen if the United States, China, or Russia suddenly developed a time machine and the rest of the world found out about it? Q. John makes a verbal maneuver that turns a question back on the one who asked it so they think he actually answered the question, which he just avoided answering. He does this all the time, and I wanted to point that out before it happens again. I am forced to admit I must rethink what I know about Mobius loops. Q. Does the forum personal name have any historical importance? You may leave a message to yourself if you wish. Q. What happened to Australia? I believe I wrote about Australia a bit earlier. Q. What colloquial language is used in the future? Many people use the internet for communication and entertainment. I would say that affects our speech. We type very fast. Q. What happens to the water? Radiation affected the water, but that can always be distilled. There are biological hazards that cannot. In addition, fresh water is hard to come by without talking to someone with a gun first. Q. Have you met your parents on this world line? What do they think of you? Yes, I am with them now. I would say it's a combination of fear and relief. Q. Does time have ends? Yes. It is believed that all world lines end. It is also thought that parallel world lines that appear to be the same end at different times. Q. If you're a time traveler, you'd be dead. The Earth, the solar system, and the galaxy are all moving. If you did travel back through time, you'd materialize in 1970 where the Earth will be in 2036, which is the vacuum of space. This is an excellent point and one I thought I went over a bit earlier. There is a gravity lock system that compensates for the local gravity outside of the Tipler sinusoid. This is the reason the unit is only accurate to about 60 years. Q. You are inconsistent about not knowing anything about physics, but you're willing to discuss the operation of your machine. I suppose I am thinking about the physics and the engineering as separate subjects. I apologize for the confusion, and I will be happy to answer your questions more directly. Q. My questions were ignored. When I asked others, you skirted them. Perhaps we could just start over again. Q. You stated that Australia repulses a Chinese invasion. Does this mean Australian government sides with your enemy? There were deep divisions in Australia also. I would associate more with a powder keg than a civil war. Q. Does intercontinental transportation still exist? Have you visited other countries? Yes, but the market is much smaller. No, I have not been overseas. Q. You have said you will not help anyone avoid death by probability. Yet many things you have said could have caused an individual to do or not do something that will now result dying or escaping death. It would help if you could give an example. If you are referring to the conflict and war in your future, I'm not sure I'm specific enough to help any individual avoid anything. Suggesting there is a war coming is a bit different than saying avoid Washington, D.C. at 3:45 a.m. on March 12, 2015. Q. Have you considered a future world leader could read this and might believe you? I think you can have just as much impact as any future leader. Q. I don't believe you when you say you're not trying to prove to us you're a real time traveler. I submit there is no way for me to prove anything on the internet. Therefore, it makes no sense to desire it. What exactly do you think I could do to prove it to anyone? I am confused by your term. Do you feel my only goal here is to entertain? Again, I am not unable to make you do anything, nor would I want that. I learn a great deal about your culture from the words you write, like right now. What do you think my goals are? Q. This thread has been all about you developing your story. I'm not sure I understand. How would my story differ if it was developed? Q. I find it hard to believe that a software tweak done into a 1975 machine would be enough to justify a time travel mission. Ah, something we have in common. Yes, I felt that way too. However, my job was to go and get it and not debate why they wanted it. I am not a computer expert. A great deal of the computer infrastructure you depend upon is based on very old systems and code. One of the reasons I was sent to 1975 was because of the person I met there, not the technology. Q. There are more efficient ways to accomplish what you claim. Perhaps you would share them with me. You might be right, and I could make your suggestions when I return. Q. If you support the model that all possibilities occur in different universes, then I cannot accept you. I am not sure I understand what you mean. If you believe in multiple world theory, Hawkins was not the one who first thought of that. If you do, then I must be real since all possibilities exist. As I recall, Hawkins felt that it was possible to build a machine, but some sort of vacuum fluctuations would destroy it right before you tried to use it. Q. You claim you have no desire to prove your story, yet everything you have done has flown in the face of that. I'm not sure that's true. In fact, I've tried to point out on at least 2 occasions that anything I do, at the request of someone else, to support my claim can be found someplace else on your world line right now. Q. You will tell us no names, no locations, or any specifics as a result of your supposed ethics. If those were indeed the ethics you were committed to, you would not be here now. I am curious about this also. Do you think I should not interact with you for your safety or mine? Q. Answer this, and I will believe you until the ends of the earth. Again, you should not offer this to anyone for any reason. Q. How would someone that came here with no money all of a sudden have plenty of money? The reason I don't have 2036 money is because it takes up weight, space, and can be faked, and I can't use it for anything. What type of expenses do you think a time traveler would have that I would need so much money for? Q. Simply archive your knowledge of any large-scale events over the next 6 months and give it to a custodian. The only problem is, now you have to trust the person who brings the information forward. Do you believe that faith alone will get you to God? Do you believe in an organized force of evil that works against men's souls? February 19th, 2001. Q. Yes, I believe that faith and good works will get me to God. I believe there is an organized force of evil that works against God's plan for men's souls. Please don't think me so cynical. I would never insult or degrade someone's religious views. My next question would be, what about knowledge? I am a firm believer that faith and good works is not enough to get to God. There is a mystery we must solve first. Q. I remember you mentioning being religious. How would you answer your own questions? Yes, I believe in organized evil. It would sure be easier to carry out an evil plan if no one believed you existed. Just curious, can anyone tell me what Satan really means? Had to answer those quickly. I have nothing but open-mindedness for religious conversation, and I look forward to more. I'll get to the other questions soon. Thanks. Q. Artificial microsingularity equals localized Kerr field. Is this a prediction? If you can take that paragraph and find a way to make $1 from it, then more power to you. Q. I never said you're an idiot. I said you are aggravating, which is not really a personal problem. Point taken. I apologize. Q. You only discuss things that you care about. Seems rather one-sided to me. I was hoping it wouldn't be so confrontational. I didn't see how words can harm either one of us. You must believe that we both have interesting things to say to each other. Isn't that worth it all by itself? Q. What state do you live in now? I am in Florida. Q. Is John Titor your real name? Yes, John Titor is a real name. Q. What is your agenda? If I tell you, I'm sure it will be much less interesting than the mystery of what it is. Q. Is this dialogue part of your agenda? If I had a secret agenda, talking to people would not be part of it. Q. Does your younger self realize what you are? Yes, he is aware that I exist, but he doesn't know who I am. Q. Are you married? No, but I did have a chance to convince myself otherwise. Q. What rank are you in the Army? It is equivalent of a major. Q. Where did you go to basic training? I wasn't fortunate enough to go to basic. We were fighting a war at the time. Q. What company were you with, and what year did you graduate? The organization of the fighting unit I was in fell under the militia. We fought against the organized army. Q. Do you have any fears? I fear people who want others to take action based on their own emotions and irrational fears. Q. What are the rules for interacting with people who aren't from your time? Do you make friends easily? Have common sense and get your job done. Yes, I have friends. Q. What would our government do if they found you? I'm sure I would end up in one of their nice little padded cells while they poked at my machine with a screwdriver. What do you think they would do? Q. What would you do if someone investigated you? Aren't you worried that it's only a matter of time before you are found? I don't worry about that very much. No one believes me anyway, right? Q. And you said, I very much want to discuss our cultures, but please help me understand how you won't be able to change something I tell you that happened on my world line. Suppose I told you the space shuttle would have a problem landing at Kennedy tomorrow because something goes wrong with the runway. If someone with the authority to do so hears that and makes the decision to land at Edwards, then bingo, Your future has changed from my past. Q. I appreciate you answering these questions, John, and thank you for calling me your friend. I'd really like to believe that. Q. Rest assured, if I went to the authorities and said, I know a time traveler, I get laughed at. The skeptics will always overrule the believers. If that were not the case, I would not be posting at all. Q. The U.S. government, Russia, or anyone else would be in the same boat. They would grab and hold any time travelers. Yes, that's what I think too. The irony is, I'm not sure the machine will really do anything for them, and all I can give them is stock quotes and sports news. Q. John, please don't take my comments about being a fraud personally. I only wanted the honest truth. I don't. Truth is something we all want, like opportunity. It's something you have to be ready for to recognize it. Q. John, what would it take to get you to stay after spring and leave later? My parents are much better at cards than I am. I fear they may not let me leave in such debt. If I had all the time I needed, I would spend much more time downloading and archiving. Q. I fear that another month or two may not be enough time. I will continue to answer the posts as long as I can. Q. Do you have things like Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, and other reported unusual animals in the future? We have our swamp monsters too. In fact, I think it's interesting that we all respond to the unknown the same way, regardless of our cultural experiences. Q. Is remote viewing used? I am only aware of it from this world line. I don't know otherwise. Q. Are psychics still in the future? Yes, psychics exist, but I don't have any knowledge of their use by the military. Q. Is there a police force in the future? Have any of your leaders been jailed or impeached? Yes, we have police, but they are organized in smaller groups. Yes, we still have political and religious leaders who find it difficult to obey the law. I would submit to you that the law is only as good as the people's willingness to apply it evenly and swiftly. Q. Will you post more pictures of the manual? Yes, I am pondering posting more of the manual. I am also considering having my departure videotaped, and yes, it will be free. My only concern is how it might affect the me on this world line. Q. Is there a global superpower? Being a superpower only makes you a target. There is an uneasy balance in the world now that everyone probably has nukes, chems, or bios. We don't just bomb people for the hell of it anymore. Military power is based on the number of autonomous fighting men who are actually willing to fight. Q. You must be accountable for changes that occur in your time period. You are correct, but nothing I do here will affect my home. I hold myself accountable for any damage I do. In my opinion, people now take clean water, electricity, and their feeling of safety for granted. If they leave the city in search of fresh water, they first have to make the realization that fresh water is a problem. It's much easier to demand someone else owes you fresh water than it is to leave the lifestyle that made it bad in the first place. Q. If I were transposed to the 1920s or 30s, you would have a hard time keeping me off the streets. I agree with you. The first time I walked into a superstore, I cried. I've never seen so much excess in one place at one time. Q. It's interesting that the photos were posted by an anonymous time traveler. Those are mine. They were posted by another person whom I'm sure is reading this also and would be happy to confirm that. Q. I see a hand control unit with a screen on it. I assume this is the computer interface. What does the display show you? Yes, that is a remote unit. The unit itself gets hot and unapproachable during long travel, and you're usually subjected to about 2 Gs. It gets a little difficult to move around, and the handheld unit sits next to you. The unit displays many things, but time in transit, time to destination, VGL variance, and unit temperature are the most common during travel. Q. There are 16 buttons. I have to assume that these are multifunction keys. Yes, the menus are screen-driven. Q. What weapons did you use to protect yourself? Do you have a weapon now? I used a shotgun in the war. Yes, I think it's prudent to be prepared for anything. Q. What is your favorite food? Oranges. I love them. Q. Your enemy was in the cities. Was the president in 2005 also on the enemy side? How did you feel personally about the president then? The president, or leader, in 2005, I believed, tried desperately to be the next Lincoln and hold the country together, but many of their policies drove a larger wedge into the Bill of Rights. The president, in 2009, was interested only in keeping his or her power base. February 21st, 2001. Q. Would you be able to travel by flying a plane and then go to the future from the air? You can only travel in time from a static position, at least with the unit I have. In order to do this, you must have knowledge of the local terrain and building structures. That's one of the basic protocols we do in any time period for possible future travelers. Q. If each world line is separate from the other, then wouldn't the consequences of your actions no effect on your original world line? Yes, that's correct. Q. If this is the case, why won't you tell us things that will give us knowledge? I am not qualified to judge if you deserve it or not, and I have no idea if you may be the next, for lack of a better reference, Hitler. However, if I were able to physically help you from a situation because I was there and I knew it was coming, I would help you. Q. My guess is that you are not a time traveler and don't want to make anyone do something stupid. Yes, I am aware that is the obvious first answer, but I would hope my moral and logical arguments are at least make a dent in your thinking. If you were a time traveler, would you be comfortable giving out all the information after considering the possible consequences, provided you knew it? If I were you, I would be worried about what the next time traveler might do, even by mistake. Q. How can I leave a message for myself in the future if the things I do in this world line do not affect any other? Just post it here. All this information will probably end up on the web in 2036. If you're alive, then, and you think ahead for some reason to do a search on yourself, you might see it. Of course, the you there would have no memory of doing it. Q. Your prediction of pending political disintegration beginning in 3 short years is impossible. Have you seen the documentary on Waco? Just for argument's sake, what do you think would happen if information were discovered that confirmed the worst accusations made against the law enforcement officers there? Would you hope nothing? Q. The idea of a farmer general leaving his field to lead his country's troops to victory is an old one. Yes, I often think about that when I see pictures of my farmer general in Omaha. It's a large bronze depiction holding a shotgun in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other. He is looking up at the sky in defiance of God after his father was killed. Q. There are only a few stories, and all of them are just retelling of the same ones in different settings. Just like life, if you take a look, I am answering every question in order unless I see something quick that I think needs a response. Thanks. Q. How far from a city is the safest place to be? A 10 kiloton nuclear weapon will vaporize metal for about half a mile and have a heat effect for about 3 miles. A 100 megaton nuclear weapon will vaporize metal to 35 miles and have a heat effect to about 250 miles. I believe the largest nuclear weapon ever built and tested was about 60 megatons. As I recall, the popular strategy today is to strike targets with multiple numbers of smaller warheads. The 100 KT to 1 MT are the most popular. I believe there are about 150 to 200 major cities in the U.S. and half as many military targets. Please correct me, someone, if I am grossly incorrect. Q. You suggest a bicycle. What about a horse? Yes, horses are good if you can feed and water them. Also, it's very hard to eat a bicycle. Q. Should we be stockpiling guns? The answer to this is no. You will draw a great deal of negative attention to yourself. I recommend becoming familiar with firearms. This means taking a safety course and learning to shoot and clean many different types. There will be plenty of guns around when you need them. Q. What kind of people will be the least trustworthy? The people with the most to lose when the world changes are the least trustworthy. Camel, through the eye of a needle, anyone? Q. Is the conflict racial? No. In fact, I would say it goes a long way towards erasing racial problems. Q. Does the war start in such a way that those willing will have time to remove themselves to safer locations? Yes. You will be forced to ask yourself how many civil rights you will give up to feel safe. Q. Will we be able to identify the enemy? They will be the ones arresting and holding people without due process. Q. Does living near a river solve water problems? There is an old saying that might be appropriate here. Safe is anywhere a hungry person can walk in 3 days. Water is important, but you must consider that when people need it, they will know where to get it. I would not plan on planting myself permanently next to a water source. Yes, distillation does make water safe, but the residue is highly dangerous. Please remember that distillation is not boiling. Q. How were the 5 people within the 100 miles contacted? The goal is to have a place to go other than your house and to be able to trust someone with your life. Foster those relationships now. Q. Do communications stay intact during the war? Main communication systems do not stay intact. CB, sideband, and non-repeating shortwave are quite useful in the future. But be mobile. Set aside the things you absolutely would need and can carry on your back. You will not be able to stay anywhere indefinitely, even with provisions and firearms. Q. Will soldiers be ordered to kill their countrymen? I'm not positive, but don't they sign a small piece of paper now asking them if they would have a problem with that? Q. In my experiment, the time traveler goes 30 seconds into the past. 30 seconds before his experiment started, he saw himself appear in the lab. There are now 2 travelers and 2 time machines. It would appear as a time loop, and an infinite number of duplicates set at duplicate self appear in the lab 30 seconds prior to the start of the trip. Yes, that's possible. Q. What is the mass of the new time travelers, and where did the mass come from? The other mass comes from other world lines. I like to think of it as standing in a room with mirrors on the walls, and the apparent me in the room next to mine steps into the room from his. Q. What is the result of the duplicates arriving at the same time? Such psychological confusion and a few fistfights. Q. How long would it take for the loop to end? The chances of hitting the precise world line where all the other duplicates are arriving is almost 0. It's possible, but increasingly less probable with each arriving duplicate. The divergence decays and the world line is less available for new U's to arrive on. Q. What happens if the experimenter decides not to continue the experiment? He can always leave the room on his own world line, or put a desk full of his books in the position where the time machine is arriving every 30 seconds. That will probably trip the VGL system and stop the time machine from arriving. Q. Do you remember any poetry from your past? A soldier's winter, the day before it wasn't snowing, the trees are strangers, leering, disapproving in the ash of winter, my world, my life, my wandering path. I pray God's eyes may once again gaze upon me and remind me that I am still his child. I only remember the first and the last lines. It has been, and quite a few more, it is rumored that this was written first as a letter by a soldier. After he died, it was added to and edited by others. In my opinion, it has become a symbol for the collective guilt my parents' generations feel for what became of the world. Q. Is there a market for new books in the future? Are most of the books available, old or new? Yes, but there are no large commercial printing or distribution companies. Books and other forms of hard media are distributed on the web and printed or put on other media from local hubs. Q. As a judge of character, have you read J.R.R. Tolkien? Did you enjoy his work? My father read The Hobbit to me as a child. I was always afraid of the dark writers, but perhaps I admired them too. February 22nd, 2001. I will get to all the questions. I'm trying to comment on them in order. I'm posting the names before all the questions, so if you feel I missed something, just bring it up again. I saw something last night that I wanted everyone's opinion on. It concerns 2 television commercial advertisings that same cellular phone product. The first commercial I didn't understand right away, but the second was obvious. In the first commercial, a man dressed in cold weather gear appears to be in a snowstorm. He's on his cellular phone saying goodbye to his family as if he was going to die in the storm. We then see he is standing in front of a snow machine at a ski resort area. In the second commercial, another man dressed in cold weather gear is talking on his cellular phone. We see a young woman inviting him to a romantic evening. He seems a bit stunned and excited, hangs up the phone, and runs off. We then see he has abandoned an unconscious person he was giving emergency medical treatment to. What do you think of these commercials? February 23rd, 2001. Q. I assume you do a lot of reading. Do you read fiction? I'm a big fan of Conrad, Twain, London, and any type of religious apocrypha. Q. What brought you to this forum? When I decided to present or reveal myself as a displacement driver, I had been watching similar boards for quite a while. I believe the only way to accept what I have to say as being remotely possible requires an open mind, able to temporarily suspend major portions of the belief in logic systems. Q. What happens to Bill Clinton? I don't really know. Q. What happens to Bill Gates? This I do know, but I won't discuss. February 24th, 2001. Q. Why are orphans a problem? Problems with the environment are still having lasting effects on all people, which causes the average lifespan to be lower. In addition, people are more susceptible to accidents. Family life and children are very highly valued, and the community takes the responsibility for raising children if their parents die. Q. What is the biggest environmental problem in the future? Water. You need it for everything, and there's very little left in the world that is positively safe to drink. Q. Do people still watch some kind of TV? Yes, but it isn't broadcast anymore. Q. Are there women on the travel team? Not that I'm aware of, but I would assume there are women who are either trained or are training for the type of work. I don't know why they wouldn't be. Q. What is the status of women in the future? I understand the question, but I have nothing to relate it to in 2036. The status of women is the same as men. Equality issues disappeared during the war. Q. Do women hold public office? Yes. Q. Do women work outside the home? Women are not expected to stay home and be barefoot and pregnant, if that's what you mean. Q. Do women get equal pay? Yes. Q. Are women safe on the streets at night? There is still crime, but people do not attack each other the way they do here. Q. What do women wear for the most part? Clothing is more functional. Women wear very similar clothing as men when working or training. In our free time or with our family and friends, clothing is much more individualized. Long dresses, knitted sweaters, and pants are still quite popular. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not very good at describing women's clothing. Q. Are the Amish alive and well in the future? Yes, I believe they are. Q. What is the birth rate? I don't know the exact figures, but having children is radically lower than it is now. It is the one thing I wish we had that you enjoy here. Q. Is there an unusual rate of birth defects? Yes, mostly stillborn. Q. You said that your culture was centered around the universities. Weren't they wiped out in the war? Not all major universities are in large cities. Q. Do you use cell phones in the future? Yes, we use a form of cell phone. Q. Do people eat red meat? Yes, but not as much as you do. Q. Do people drive cars in the future? Yes, but they are not produced in nearly the same numbers or used in the same way. Q. Are airlines still in operation in the future? Yes, but again, not nearly as many. Q. Do airlines travel internationally? Yes, but most people don't really want to go overseas. Q. Are people pressured into a Christian doctrine? Not at all. Q. Do the police make drug busts? No. Q. Are there jails? What kind of criminals are in them? Yes, there are jails. Mostly theft, fraud, rape, and murder. Q. What kind of public punishment is there in the future? Hard labor, community service, banishment, you must move to another community, and public execution. Q. Your justice system sounds like New England during religious persecution and intolerance. How do you define intolerance? We don't really have the energy or desire to waste time being intolerant. If you produce and help the community, then you can do anything you want within the law. Q. Are there herbal medicines and alternative lifestyles in the future? Yes. Q. Is there personal freedom in the future? Yes, the same freedoms you enjoy under the Constitution. Q. Is there an IRS? Yes, we pay taxes. Sounds like you don't enjoy keeping track of your personal income taxes. I don't think anybody does. Q. Is the same type of money used? Will our money be good in 2010 or 2020? Yes, we use money. That's a good question. I don't see why you couldn't use your current bills in the future. Q. Other than time travel, how do most people get around the country? Do people travel very much? There is a high-speed train system, horseback, bike, walking. Automobiles are used mostly for sport and some transportation. Q. Are people suspicious of strangers, or is everyone just one big happy family? There is still conflict and mistrust. Yes, I am suspicious of strangers. I think that's an instinct we all are given to help us stay alive. Q. How do most people die during the war? In this order: starvation, disease, bullet wounds, radiation. It's been pointed out to me that the links to the pictures are all down for some reason. February 25th, 2001. Q. John, do names have anything to do with the future of time travel? There are numerous people and organizations that contribute to the practical application of physical time travel. I think you would be surprised how much real work is being done right now. Q. If you videotape your departure and your family sends the tape to someone, would this affect you in the future? It wouldn't affect me on my home world line in the least. I would only be concerned how it would affect the me here. Of course, it may be a large part of my secret agenda, and I have no choice but to do it anyway. Q. I doubt that anyone could determine that you actually time traveled, but it would be a good show. I wonder what it would have been like to see a plane break the sound barrier before the jet engine was invented. Q. You said that there would be a war. Can you at least tell us which cities will be nuked? No, I won't do that. However, I submit to you that when the moment comes, it will be absolutely plain as day that you are unsafe in the cities. The millions of people that stay will choose to stay. That's what comes as a surprise. Q. Are you traveling in space in 2036? Not yet, but they are working on it. Q. Has there been contact with an alien race in the future? Not that I'm aware of. Q. You say your machine has a 60-year limit. Is it possible to go back 60 years and then another 60 years? Yes, that is possible, but the divergence grows exponentially as you move farther away from your world line of origin. I could make 50-year jumps to go back and see what the world looked like 2,000 years ago, but there is a strong chance it would look nothing like what I expect. There are larger distortion units that are more accurate and have a larger window. Q. Have scientists in 2036 proved the world line theory? Is there any information you can share with us that proves it? The many worlds theory seems to wrap up very nicely into current string theory. Unfortunately, we have not solved string theory yet either, but n to the negative 10 seems to be the best working model we have in 2036. As you are probably aware, the big equation does not need the final solution in order to take advantage of the smaller parts that do work in the real world. Q. You say you don't want to affect anything by giving information, but you could change this world line just by talking about the war. I don't believe that knowing a possible future makes it happen. You are capable of changing your world line for the better right now. None of the things I have said will be a surprise. They were set in motion 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Are you really surprised to find out that Iraq has nukes now? Or is that just BS to whip everyone up into accepting the next war? Q. I would love to come along with you for a ride to the future. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure you would like the year 2036. Q. Please tell us the next great moment in music. I appreciate your frustration, and quite a few people have asked me questions like this. The expected answer is that I don't want to break my personal code of time travel ethics. The real answer is, I just don't know. I was not prepared for the year 2001. I was prepared for 1975. I don't suppose it would be very impressive if I told you disco would be big until 1980. Q. Am I getting this? You can take all the people you want to go to the future in the back of your Chevy truck? Actually, the question was rhetorical. No one is going back with me. Thanks. One thing I do find interesting about time travel tech is the expectation that we can pretty much go anywhere at any time. These systems are quite complicated and they do have limitations. Are you going to be around in 1975? February 26, 2001. Q. Nuclear warfare doesn't seem to be the biggest form of fighting in the future. Nuclear war will be very effective at destroying an enemy's economy and the people's will to fight. Q. I don't think nuclear warheads are going to be shot from each end of the globe. I would caution you against that. That's exactly what they want you to think while they continue to develop smaller and more accurate MIRVs. Have you ever seen a neutron bomb the size of a basketball? Q. You say one of the hardest things to do in 2036 is find clean water. You also say you only trust food you've grown. Is any of this a result of your experiences with biological warfare? Yes and no. Yes, biological warfare and accidents do cause a great deal of problems, but the lack of a working infrastructure also hinders the continuation of the food manufacturing you depend on now. Q. Is there any more information on your family you can give us? Once I leave, I would not want any attention to come to my family. Q. Is the date of your return to the future April 19th? That is the day to remember, but I was thinking more along the lines of March 21st. Q. The most likely leader of a war movement like the one you describe would be a farmer. Throughout history, farmers have often been a target of oppression because they are absolutely necessary to civilization, but too busy to defend themselves. If you push a farmer too far, they stop growing food and have nothing to do but hide in the woods and shoot back. Q. My asking about CERN as a prediction was a genuine question and had nothing to do with making money. Is this comment a hint about the future? Please do not be offended by my making a buck remark. I say it with a wink to help other people form their questions. Yes, some very interesting things will be going on at CERN in the near future. Q. What is interesting is the type of questions being asked and the apparent hostility that you are being subjected to for no reason. Yes, I find that interesting too. Sometimes I wonder what people are really angry about, and I have come to the conclusion that frustration is often directed at the messenger. But then again, that's history. Q. Is your sense of timing off in new environments? No, my timing isn't off. I do, however, find myself stopping in mid-stride and paying extra attention to my environment when I forget when I am. When I was a child, my mother would tell me stories about angels. She told me that angels found it hard to communicate with man because man could remember his past but couldn't see his future. Angels, acting as the eyes and servants of God, had no memory of the past, but had infinite knowledge of the future. Although I am no angel, I often thought about that story after I left 2036. Q. John, you were born about halfway into this cycle. Gen Xers would be about 40 to 50 years old in 2036. In my opinion, the Gen Xers ended up in two categories. There were the ones who had learned to be independent by breaking away from tradition and society's expectations, and the others who had no idea how to take care of themselves and just wanted the trains to run on time. The ones in the first group feel very guilty about letting the world go to hell, and the ones in the second group are dead. February 27th, 2001. Q. You say you were in the militia fighting the U.S. Army. I would think civilians would have no chance of successfully fighting the military. You must realize that why people are fighting is more important than what they are fighting with. The conflict was not about taking and holding ground. It was about order and rights. They were betting that people wanted security instead of freedom, and they were wrong. Q. Is it a stalemate with the resistance militia hiding out until the cities are wiped out, allowing them to surface? The cities were not isolated because of them. They were isolated because of us. Q. You give the approximate number of cities and military bases intact before the nuclear attack. Are they all hit? Nuclear weapons and guidance systems are less than perfect. Most target receives more than one warhead, but some of them were more accurate than others. I would estimate the overall accuracy was around 60 to 70%. Q. You talked about safe places before. 3 days walk from where? In my experience, a motivated, starving person is only capable of walking about 3 days. The more distance you put between yourself and anyone who is likely to be hungry, the better. Does anyone stay neutral during the war? Some try to. Q. Does anyone lead a normal life during the Civil War? No. Q. You say the Civil War lasts from 2004 to 2008, and then the short Big War in 2015. What do the years from 2008 to 2015 look like? How long does World War III last? I'm not sure I said that exactly. By 2008, I would say the civil conflict is pretty much at everyone's doorstep. Western instability during the conflict leads to the attack in 2015. World War III is very short with a longer period of mop-up. Q. You mentioned Canadians, but I don't think you mentioned the impact of that country. There's not a great deal I know about Canada, except to say they were pretty much in the same type of conflict. They did have the DO line, you know. Q. You said the position of women is controversial and conservative in the future. What does that mean? It certainly isn't disrespectful. I apologize if it sounded that way. It's one of those areas I realize will be difficult to discuss because we may lack similar experiences. In 2036, there is not a desire to have it all. With factors such as the difficulty in conceiving and the decentralization of production and industry, there is not an unrealistic scramble to have a career and a family. Out of necessity and circumstance, family life has become more traditional. However, there are many families where the wife, or mother, is the main breadwinner, and the husband, father, remains home with his family. The difference is this method of decision-making. People do not have children, if they are able, unless they can devote the required resources to maintain them. February 28, 2001. Q. What type of money system do you have on your world line? It's not very different than it is now. Yes, we have money and credit cards. However, like everything else, the monetary system is decentralized. Banking is based mostly around the community structure. There are no multinational banking or computerized economic systems. There are also no income taxes. Q. Is there an IRS and I need to keep a lot of receipts and paperwork? Yes, we pay taxes. I have considered going into more detail about the tax system, but I didn't have a great deal of time. Currently, I am watching my father go over all his taxes, and he doesn't look like he's having a very good time. My comment referred to the collective misery I see around me during this time of year. I do enjoy the questions, and I appreciate the interest. Q. On the 30-second time travel experiment? I suppose there is a difference between a thought experiment and the real world. It appears we have our virtual laboratories confused, as I'm not sure I understand all the rules to your experiment. Then it occurred to me that in your position, this is all just a thought experiment anyway. I will try to be more literal in my explanation. I'm not positive, but I don't see anything that indicates the time traveler would remain in the same spot once he arrives. 30 seconds is almost long enough to get coffee in your thought experiment. If that were true, and they all kept moving, then the experiment could go on for quite a while until the planet filled with time travelers. You also stated it would appear as a time loop. If it only appears that way, then the natural divergence may stop the experiment when 3 or 4 time travelers arrive and the others end up on different world lines. Q. The problem is, what happens to the duplicates as they arrive at virtually the exact same location at the same time? Again, you used the word virtually, which to me means not exactly the same spot. Under the laws of physics, I don't personally know what happens if I were on exactly the same spot, but I do know it's possible. Under the operational limits of the distortion unit, as soon as the VGL sensors pick up an unexpected mass in the target world line, it would shut down and drop off in a world line where your experiment is not occurring. Q. Given their masses will occupy the same space, what prevents a naked singularity from forming? I see. Now they are in the same space. I suppose that's a possibility. If so, Then as soon as the experiment started, a singularity would form under the infinite mass and swallow the planet. Perhaps they tried this on Cygnus. Q. It's a cute creative answer, but it didn't address my question. What is a loop? Will it decay? And how long will it take to decay? Well, I think it's a nice creative question too. Under your example, the loop would terminate as soon as the singularity forms and would be constantly fed by all the arriving time travelers. After taking a quick shower and listening to the quiet hum of my archiving hard drives, I decided that, foreign member name, and I may have made bad second impressions on each other. I find it ironic because it's people like, same name, that will actually solve those physical issues and make it possible for people like me to go back in time and argue with them. So I hope there are no hard feelings. It also reminds me of a short story between a bicycle maker in the 1900s and a man who could fly faster than sound. Bicycle maker. Well, Mr. Mach, if your plane can go faster than the speed of sound, how did you solve the compressibility problem that would tear your flimsy craft to pieces? Mr. Mach. First off, the aircraft are much more stable and made of metal instead of wood and fabric. Second, it is possible to pass the sound barrier by designing the wings and body to move the shock wave down the plane as you surpass the speed of sound. Bicycle maker. Really? Planes made of metal? Well, if your plane can fly faster than sound, then why don't you just fly to the moon? Mr. Mach. Doesn't work that way. You need air to make the engine function. Bicycle maker. I see. Your plane can go faster than sound, but needs air to function. That's convenient, and it all sounds like a penny book fantasy to me. Mr. Mach. Perhaps. Perhaps not.